Welcome back to Inside Story. We're talking stem cells today, a decision to allow public funding for stem cell research in the United States. Now, in the first half, we talked about ethical, political issues. The science itself, though, has its own issues. You might remember we talked about the adaptability of stem cells, which makes them so versatile. Well, that's actually something which can make them, in some cases, unusable. In the worst cases, the cells have been known to cause tumours. So what about the other options? The first, and we've heard about this already, stem cells from adults. They're in small quantities throughout the body. They are difficult to isolate and identify, and as of now, adult stem cells are often considered not as versatile as embryonic cells. Another option is IPS, induced pluripotent stem cells. Bit more complicated, these ones. Reprogramming DNA from adult skin is a way of describing it, though there is known to be some risk of cancer with using these cells. Bottom line, though, with both these methods, even with their risks, they are less controversial, they are more tested, and they involve consenting adults. Still with us, our guests in Philadelphia, Arthur Kaplan; in Chicago, Clark Forsyth; and in London is Dr. Stephen Minger. Back to Philadelphia and Arthur Kaplan. I want to read you something here which I've got from a group called CORE. It is the Comment on Reproductive Ethics. And it says 56 diseases have been treated with adult stem cells, but no recorded cases using stem cells from an embryo. Is that something to question, or is that actually a reason to go after more research?
You know, Kamal, there's something ironic about this debate about which alternative scientifically is the most fruitful, the one most reasonable to pursue. The National Academy of Sciences in the U.S., scientists all around the world agree that they want to pursue all these options at this point in time because we don't really know what the best strategy is going to be. The ethical objections are coming on grounds about embryo destruction, and I think it's a little disingenuous to get us into a battle over which strategy is best. That said, I'll repeat what I said earlier. Embryonic stem cell research has been starved in the U.S., and the U.S. National Institutes of Health, up until Obama changes the policy today, is basically the basic single largest source of basic research funding. Companies don't do that. The government funding does that. We will have to see what happens when the spigot opens up, and we have a lot of stem cell research with embryos, and probably with cloning too, and with induced pluripotent, all funded.
But you're
the
saying,
proof will be in the pudding.
You're saying, sorry, to get you right, you were saying it's not, you don't feel it's so much of a debate over which type of stem cell research is more effective. If there are proven results
if that's
with
the debate,
adults,
then let's ask the...
well, let me ask you that. That's what we want to look
debate,
at.
We don't need to hear from the...
Go ahead.
We don't need to hear from the Vatican about which science strategy is the best, or Right to Life groups about which science strategy is the best. What we need to hear from is scientists, and the overwhelming majority of scientists worldwide say, at this point in time, given the little that we know and the early stage of work on embryonic stem cell research, we have to pursue all strategies. If you get rid of the moral objection about embryo destruction, if you concede that there are plenty of embryos left over at clinics that we can use, then arguing about the alternatives is a science question. It's not a question of ethics or religion any longer. And I think the science answer is very clear.
It's misleading to say that embryonic research has been starved. The states have devoted billions of dollars to this, and over the last decade there have been hundreds of millions spent on embryonic research in the United States. If that's starved, then it boggles the mind to understand what Art and Steve think is necessary, especially at a time when we're seeing real therapies for real patients with adult stem cells. Embryonic research has not been starved, but adult stem cell research has gotten more money because it shows more outcomes and more positive outcomes.
Gentlemen, I want to bring in Dr. Minger again in London, mostly because of a point that Arthur Kaplan brought up about the benefits of embryonic versus adult. I'm going to come to you again, Dr. Minger, with a very simplistic question and say, you know, there could always be more to learn about the benefits of embryonic research. Is there enough reason to believe that, though? It's like saying, you know, there could be life on Mars, but we're not sure. Is that a reason to go after it?
Well, as I said before, there are a number of diseases for which we, at the present time, are convinced that there are not adult stem cell populations that will treat this disorder. So you need an alternative source population of cells. At the same time, the induced pluripotency technology is very exciting. And if you're going to pursue this, you have to have something that you compare it to. If it's true that induced pluripotency cells are just like embryonic stem cells, except that they don't come from an embryo, you are still nevertheless faced with exactly the same problems that face embryonic stem cell research. These cells will tumor if you inject them in an undifferentiated state. They have all the same problems with trying to take a cell population that can differentiate into 200 plus different cell populations and how you direct that differentiation toward a single cell type. Without embryonic stem cells derived from embryos, IPS technology goes nowhere because we won't have learned anything over the last 8 years of working with embryonic stem cells to guide the IPS work. You know, somehow people seem to think that these are two completely different cell populations. The only thing that's different about them is where they come from. At the end of the day, they are both pluripotent stem cells that can turn into a wide diversity of cell types. And we need embryonic stem cells derived from embryos to guide the IPS work. One other point that I would make, it is absolutely unrealistic to think that we are going to make a single cell line for every single individual that we want to promote cell therapy for. There is no way logistically, feasibly, and even at an infrastructure level where you can generate a single cell line for every person in America or in Europe that you want to perform cell therapy for.
But if he wants to solve that problem, then IVF embryos are the least likely source to do that, because you're going to have the immune rejection or tissue rejection, and you can't get patient matching from IVF embryos.
You're never going to be able to get patient matching from IPS either.
That there are millions of them.
You're never going to get patient matching from IPS either.
Is that problem either.
Gentlemen, I'm going to jump in because unfortunately the
problem.
satellite delay is causing a few problems, and we've got, I think, 4 of us all talking at once, I'm afraid. Let me just go back to Arthur Kaplan in Philadelphia as we start to wind down this show a little bit. I just want to ask you, from an American perspective there, this is changing topic slightly, but about the president himself, about this change which we've seen today. He said he wanted to put science front and centre in this new administration. Is this the beginning, do you think? Is stem cells just the beginning and the most high profile?
I think it is. I think throughout the Bush administration years, we saw more politicization of science. The Bush administration wouldn't take seriously scientific advice on climate. It wasn't really paying much attention to arguments about abstinence and the role of birth control in controlling unwanted pregnancy. Obviously, in stem cell science, it put religious values ahead of the science. So I think we're going to see a change. And to put it bluntly, President Obama campaigned on this. It was clear where he wanted to go, and I think the American people have made it clear where they want to go. So at the end of the day, the debate we're having is moot. We're going to see the funding move. We're going to see whether embryonic stem cell research pays off, and the proof will be in the pudding, so to speak.
Clark Forsyth, the reaction from you there. Arthur Kaplan brought up the issue of religion. Did we have 8 years of a president guided by religion, and now 4 years at least of a president guided by science?
Look at what adult stem cells has produced, and you'll see that the science and the funding matched up. The question here is not science feeding at the public trough without any oversight whatsoever. It's what's going to happen at the end of the day with real outcomes for real patients. And you look at clinical trials and you look at scientific papers published, and it's all pointing to adult stem cells, not IVF or embryonic research. I mean, when you talk about faith, basically Steve and Art are saying just have faith. Don't look at the papers, don't look at the outcomes for real patients, just have faith in us without strings attached. And you can't do that when it comes to public dollars in a time of unprecedented deficits. And so this administration is just wasting tax dollars on the wrong research.
Gentlemen, great discussion today, and one which I suspect in the end probably has no wrong or right answers per se. My thanks to Arthur Kaplan in Philadelphia, Clark Forsyth in Chicago, and Dr. Stephen Minger in London. And thank you, our viewer, for joining us for this edition of Inside Story. Your suggestions, your comments, you know where to send them. It's insidestory@aljazeera.net. From the whole team, goodbye for now.